I would like to give a brief introduction for the both of them. I will start with Dr. Stratakis. Dr. Stratakis, Constantine Stratakis, is the Chief Strategy Officer currently at Alpine Pharmaceuticals and a Senior Investigator at NIH and Ford. She is a dynamic, internationally known translational investigator and executive leader with a basic training in medicine, genetics, and molecular endocrinology. As a medical geneticist, clinical trialist, and endocrinologist, Dr. Stratakis has worked on the genetics of solid tumors and has identified a number of predisposing genetic defects, including a disease that bears his name, Kearney-Stratakis syndrome. He led the NIH genetics endocrinology branches and intramural research at NIH program for more than 18 years and still sees patients. He has been awarded with numerous awards, and he had the opportunity to nurture the careers of more than 200 trainees over the last 25 years. And I would like to give a brief introduction for Dr. Kyriaki Bakirtzi, who is the Scientific Director at Experimental Education and Research Center at Alpine Pharmaceuticals. Dr. Bakirtzi is a United Kingdom and US trained biologist, biochemist, and molecular biologist. After completing her master's, she moved to the foundation for her PhD to Ford in Iraklio in Crete, where she works for the Department of Electronic Structure and Laser. And then she moved to United States of America with a full scholarship to attend a PhD program at the Boston University Medical School in the field of neuroscience. She did her postdoctoral fellowship at School of Medicine at UCLA, where her research focused on microRNAs, intercellular communication via exosomes, and subcellular molecular signaling in relation to colon cancer and Crohn's disease. She has been awarded numerous awards, and she is currently in the academic program coordinator. She's the academic program coordinator for the Pan-Hellenic Organization of Pharmaceutical Industry and the scientific director of Alpine's Experimental Research and Training Center, which is one of the most important privately owned centers for education and translational research in the Balkans. So I would like to welcome you both. And we are all looking forward to hear your presentation, the title of which is Current and Future Initiatives, Investments and Opportunities Fighting Disease. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And let me share my screen, and let me ask you if you can see our screen. Can you see our screen?
Yes, we can see the screen, but it's better to have it in the slide, in the presentation mode. So we cannot see fully.
I just have to switch, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see.
Okay, yeah.
There. No. For some reason, it shows, because I have two screens. Is there any way you can change it? So
I think that you are there. Yes, if you press this.
Maybe that way. No. Nope. I'm not sure how to do it. Is there any way that we can, if you can help us in doing it, that would be great. If not,
what if you open it and then you share screen? Because you share screen. Can you stop sharing?
Let me just stop sharing and then go back, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Let's see if we can change the screens.
Oh, it has to be over there. So
what?
Share screen and we don't let it as a presentation mode.
You do.
Πού είναι, πώς ανοίγει αυτό?
Sorry for this.
It's okay.
Now share. There. Maybe it will work.
Okay, I think we can just leave it as it is now.
can you see it now?
Yes, we can see it now.
Okay. So anyway, thank you. Now you can see it now. Now it's still the
No,
two.
perfect.
You
Now
like
it's-
it?
Yes, because it's there.
Oh, now you see the one screen. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Can you see one screen? Excellent.
Yes.
Good work. So I want to thank you for the introduction, and I'm sorry for the technical issues. So as you just heard, I'm joined by Dr. Bakirtzi, who is our scientific director for excellence here at the Alpen Center for Research. I'm a newcomer. I've been here only for 3 months, and I still come back to the United States, where my lab is still open, as I transition from the United States to Greece to operate a lab, as well as be the founding director of a new research center that will be quite a bit larger than the one that Kyriaki is now directing. Kyriaki and I work daily together, and when we got the invitation to present to you what we do, we decided that we should do this together, because really we do everything, almost everything, at work anyway, together. So we're going to present to you current future initiatives, investments, and opportunities in fighting disease, and show you where we're coming from in building this new research center that we hope will be a paradigm for fighting disease in Greece using technology and the skills that exist in Greece. And what makes this different from the past is that we're not trying to build something extravagant. We hope that we will get there with time, but we do want to use current expertise and current skills to get up and running within a couple of years. So how is medicine changing, and why a lot of things are simpler today than they used to be when, for example, Fotis Kafados opened the fourth in Crete? Things today are slightly easier, actually, if you want to do something in Greece. At the same time, of course, there's other challenges, and I'll present to you in my second part that both the opportunities and the challenges. But let me use a paradigm, and there's no better paradigm than, of course, what happened in the last year with COVID-19. And why I chose to use COVID-19 because it's a great example of 21st century biology, medicine, and treatment. Very, very important. Within 6 weeks from the first cases of COVID-19 disease in China, we knew the sequence. And what you see in this slide is that the first statement there that says that we knew very quickly that this was an RNA molecule that was enveloped, that was associated with a very few proteins, about 7 proteins or so, that were given very quickly names, they were sequenced. We knew their not only translational processing, but also their post-translational processing. We knew where the virus was, and this is a beautiful real-life image, just with color, but a real-life image from electronic microscopy, from EM, showing the viral particles in the cell. All of that within weeks, again, I repeat that, from the first cases. Now, within 3 months from the first cases, so within another few weeks, we were able to identify the full biological cycle of the life and death of the virus, life, replication, and death of the virus. And what's shown here in this slide, beautiful demonstration of the 9 essential steps that the virus takes to first enter the cell, then use the host ribosome, make the very important proteins, and then engage the host cell machinery to replicate, make multiple copies of itself, and then, of course, form a virion, and that virion release into the extracellular space to infect other cells by exocytosis. I mean, literally, within 3 months from the first sequence we were able to know all these steps. Now, why am I saying this? Why is this important? Well, it's important because within 6 months from the first cases, we could design drugs. Basically today, everything is online, the structural biology online, where you can check a library of compounds. For each one of these steps, you can identify a compound that you either know in real life, either in humans or in animal studies, you know what the compound does, or if you don't know what the compound does, you can quickly pull out the compound from the library, do experiments in cell lines, then in animal models, and proceed with the required approvals to use them in humans. So you can see that none of this would have been possible with the speed that it was done without knowing the biology. And all of that was done because we have access to these tremendous tools and databases today. Not only were we able to find drugs through these steps. Now, I'm not saying these drugs are all effective. That's a different story. And of course, there's a lot of work that remains to be done. What I'm saying is that never before in the history of medicine, we were able to pull out so many drugs so quickly and know the exact targets and the molecular steps to target. Okay, so that's a first. Whether they are effective or not, it remains to be seen. But you had tools to work with within 6 months. And within about 8 to 9 months, you had vaccines. And again here, not only the molecular biology of the virus was essential to design the vaccines, but something else that's very important also for what they're trying to do in Greece, technology that was used for other reasons, like for example, for cancer vaccines, namely the mRNA technology, to manipulate the immune system to attack cancer cells, technology that had been developed about 20 years ago, that technology was ready on the shelf, literally on the shelf, for the ready mind to take it, design the vaccine, and use it. And here we are. Within 8 months, we had the first mRNA vaccines because this technology had been developed for something else, and it was easy for the ready mind, for the technology to be transplanted into the mRNA, into the COVID-19 vaccine work. That led to the many trials, and you can see here the many countries, and this slide is already old. This is about 6 months old now, and this is 6 months ago. How many trials were going on? You know there are many more today. In fact, there's quite a bit of discussion, you may have heard it, that in Greece too, there will be trials with vaccines, especially the mRNA vaccines. In addition to learning everything about the biology, designing quickly drugs, designing vaccines, the genetics of the infection, as well as the side effects of the vaccine, as well as the long-term effects of the virus, all of that, the genetics of that, was possible to be investigated in quick time. Now, some of the data are contradictory, right? So this is just bringing up a nice example of how quickly you can get beautiful work published that will be quickly contradicted within months by equally beautiful work. But again, the power of what we can do today. So this is a paper that was published a few months ago, I think November 2020, showing that for people that in Western Europe were in the ICU from COVID, they had higher representation in their genome from the Neanderthal DNA. Now we know Neanderthal DNA has been linked to obesity and diabetes, so that made sort of sense. But within months, so this was November 2020, in March 2021, this paper came out and basically showed that another region of the human genome in Western Europe that is also inherited from the Neanderthals actually protects from COVID-19. Now, the two studies seem to contradict each other, but if you actually read them, they don't, because the one is on chromosome 3, the other one is chromosome 12. Whoever inherits one from chromosome 3 has the X, whoever inherits from chromosome 12 has Y. But this is beautiful. None of this would have been possible 10 years ago. Today, it is possible because we have access to a large number of samples. These are the COVID-19 samples, or its saliva that we spit out every time we get tested. That's a sample that can be tested for its genetics. So number one, you need a biobank. And number two, we have the entire genome on databases, so you can quickly sequence these saliva samples, compare the genomes to the deposited genomes. That's possible today for most Western European genomes, and quickly we are learning the genomes of practically every nation in the world. And so it will be possible to do even transnational studies and compare environmental differences, the way our genome, in other words, responds to different environments and so on. This is work that can be done in Greece. We absolutely have the technology to do it. And what hasn't happened yet is the concept. So you need somebody who knows that this is possible. That's very important. Number two, we need to teach hospitals, medical centers, clinics, and wards not to throw away biological samples. Number three, we have to make sure we have the proper consents to do so. And number four, we have to change the way everybody's thinking about the beauty and the easiness with which you can do amazing R&D without having access to space technology, okay? So I hope I have convinced you that medicine today is very different in biology from what it was 20 years ago. The way I describe, I like this Latin term, the way I describe medicine in mid-2020, in the mid-2020s, right, in the mid-2000s, so 2021. And that is a phrase that is from Virgil's Aeneid, sic itur ad astra, meaning you go to the stars, but it's not a straight line. It's not like shooting a rocket. You go through a tour, sic itur. You go through a tour. It's not straightforward. And it's not straightforward because it changes so fast. And of course, we Greeks are very familiar with change. My favorite Greek philosopher is Heraclitus, who said this very, very simple two words, panta ta panta ri, everything flows. And it's so, so true, because today, in 2021, it flows much faster than ever. And it will continue to flow much faster than ever, which is why we need AI to deal with it. So what are the opportunities that we have? And it is so true in Greece, like it is everywhere else in the world. The opportunities we have in medicine R&D today is technology. I just showed you the power of technology. The size, we were never able before, and it will be expanding forever, the size of the data. I mean, this is amazing. You just, for me, it blows my mind. I went to medical school in the 80s, and we were talking about doing a study on 60 cases. And here we're reading, I was reading New England Journal of Medicine today, or the new COVID vaccines, and thousands of samples. I mean, that's mind-blowing, all right? Communication, we are interconnected. So I understand some of you are at Hopkins, others are here in Athens, and I don't know how many of our audience are where, and I don't care, because if they care because of whatever time they are sleepless or too early, I don't care. Bottom line is, you see me in my office in Kyriaki in Athens, there's others in Athens, and you are at Hopkins, and we can communicate. And that's amazing. Not only we can communicate, but we can exchange data. We tried a little bit, we played with the slides, which took us a couple of minutes, but at the end, you get my slides. You know, just imagine 20 years ago, that was not possible, right? The information, there's a free flow of information. That is wonderful. It has its risks, of course, but that's in my challenges. And here's my segue to the challenges. And the challenges are, we have to continue, remember I said before about sequencing genomes. We have to make sure that in this expansion, the rapid expansion, we are actually inclusive and we provide equality, which can only be done if we decrease the costs and increase the education of everybody involved. We have to make sure that the systems continue to innovate. One of the things we see often, that was true in the United States at the NIH, where I was, it's true in Greece, is that the administrative infrastructure doesn't keep up with the times. And that's somewhat expected, but of course it's very obstructive when things are changing so fast. And so Dr. Bakirtzi knows the continuous discussions we have here about system innovations, even within our company here, but also, of course, clearly within the administrative infrastructure that Greece and other countries have. The biomedical workforce doesn't keep up with times. Again, it's because of the rapid change. What we see is that doctors that are in clinical practice for a certain time are really not participating in this revolution. And I'm not sure what to do about that, other than somehow enticing the biomedical workforce to engage. And how one does that, I have ideas, but we can discuss them if we have a Q&A session. But it's a true problem, right? Because if you want to engage a clinician that sees a patient to send us data or saliva for DNA, and he doesn't even know what DNA is, that is a problem. And so that is something that is an obstacle. Technology has to be used ethically, and that's very important. In the speed with which we all do changes right now, we tend to forget the bioethics or the ethics of everything we do. And it's essential that all of us have the moral integrity to protect not only the privacy of the data that we collect, but also the entire enterprise. Where are we going? We have to always keep thinking. And I think in Greece, we are unique in our perspective because we have so many thousands of years of Greek philosophy and arts that I hope inform us better in making wiser, more ethical choices every time we use technology for anything. But of course, for the things I'm talking about here, which is genetics and medicine. Finally, another big challenge is how the population is changing. We need to know that the people we're talking to are not the same they were 10 or 15 or 20 years ago, not only because they have access to social media, but also because their situation is very different today than what it was before. And I'll say a few more things about that as we go along. So for our discussion here, I think we believe that the most revolutionary change in medicine, the one we want to take advantage at in the new center, is genomic medicine. And you see here the cover of the Time magazine. I was at the United States then. By the way, the guy who brokered the agreement was Greek, Aris Patrinos, right, from the Department of Energy. Aris Patrinos then, in 1998, brokered the agreement between Greg Venter, who's this guy, the bald guy, and Francis Collins, who's my boss at the NIH now. So Francis and Greg agreed that the public sector and the private sector, under the auspices of the Department of Energy in the United States, a Greek guy, Aris Patrinos, to sequence the genome together. What the public put together was the money and the infrastructure, the public infrastructure. What the private sector put together was the speed, the efficiency, and some of the money to do it. And within 3-4 years, it was done. And I'm mentioning this because if this revolution was possible through a private-public partnership, what we are doing at LPEN with the new center is exactly the same example. We are the first research center in Greece that will be working under private auspices, but we in no way believe that we will be on our own. And in fact, we already have our first public-private partnership with the Institute of Technology, Hellas, Research and Technology, Hellas, in Crete, the foundation, fourth, which is ITE in its Greek initials. And certainly we hope that other public institutions will partner with us in what we are trying to do. So we are building along the lines of the Aris Patrinos agreement, another Greek, of the Greg and Francis Human Genome Sequencing Project of building something similar here. What you see in the graph is the number of genomes sequenced between 2017 and what's projected in 2029. I can tell you it's much more than that, but I think I have the number in this slide. So here's Francis Collins again, and you can see the number of sequenced genomes between 2017 and 2030, 30,000 in 17, 36 million and counting in 2030, and it's probably going to be even higher than that. And I have some other examples from cancer and so forth. It is important to understand that what we are trying to do here is in preparation for healthcare system in Greece, adapting some of this technology, because it's going to happen. As I said again, I'm not here to bring space technology to Greece. I'm here to bring technology that is in use and that will be in use because it's needed. And so here's an example of what projections we have in the United States in terms of how the genomic medicine will be adapted by healthcare. So you saw that in 2012, here you see in the slide, only 1% of genomes that were done in the United States at the time were done in the public in the healthcare systems. Look at that, the projection in 2022. Today is close to 20%. By 2022, so that's next year, 80% of the genomes in the United States will be funded by healthcare systems. Now, of course, these are private healthcare systems because in the United States, we don't have a national healthcare system. But look at the next slide. So these are now national healthcare systems in countries that do have national healthcare systems, right? So for example, Finland, 10% of its population in 2020 has had its genome sequenced. And in the United States, it's 1 million. That's the public part. That is the All of Us project. In Australia, is 100,000. In the United Kingdom, is 100,000. Greece is also sharing databases with other parts of the world, and that's essential. This is a slide. It's a real-life slide. The only thing that has been added is colors, showing real-life communications of transferring big data, more than 1 megabase each. Each one of these lines is more than 1 megabase across continents at a given time. And all we have done here is add the colors for each continent. But basically, you can see how interconnected we are, exchanging data all the time. Now, this is not necessarily scientific data, and there could be movies, could be YouTube, whatever, but it doesn't matter. The point is how connected we are. And finally, for our purposes being in pharma, we obviously want to take that genomic revolution into therapeutics. And one of the ways we want to do it is the simplest way. Again, something that needs to be done. It's done already in some diseases, but it will be more widely done, and it will be essential to the success of the healthcare system. And that is, when does a drug work? Not all the time. And even Galen knew that, talking about typhus epidemic in Rome back in the 2nd century AD. He said, all who drink of this remedy recover in a short time, except those whom it does not help, who all die. Therefore, it is obvious that it fails only in incurable cases. So he makes the case that the same drug, whatever the remedy was, did not work the same in patients, even within the same family, the same house, the same infection. It didn't work the same. And so that concept was well known in medicine for centuries. Now we are in a position to, every time we give a drug for whatever, to know whether it can work or not. In other words, not prescribe a drug that's not going to work. There's no reason to expose a patient to a side effect for a drug that's not going to work or it's not going to be very effective. And our goal is to, in a few years, every drug that Elpen here makes, every drug that circulates in Greece should have a manual that will say, it's useful here, it's useful there, don't take it if you don't have this, if you don't have that, in terms of the genetic predisposition, other factors that will make it effective. As you know, this is already done, of course, in breast cancer, it's done in prostate cancer. but it's only limited even in the United States. But that's where we're headed. There's absolutely no way that we'll be giving compounds to people, or vaccines for that matter, that will not work. There's absolutely no reason to expose anybody in the era of individualized medicine to the side effects of a compound or a vaccine. That's not going to work. So pharmacogenomics is essential for what we want to do. We are really moving towards an era very quickly where almost every laboratory test we will be doing will be on a chip. And we call that lab on a chip, and it's already happening. I mean, you already know that with an application on your iPhone, you can measure your blood glucose, right? A sensor, you can measure the blood glucose, you can measure the heart rate, you can correlate what you eat with your blood glucose levels, with your heart rate, with your sleep, everything, right? But that's limited still. We are getting very quickly at a time when practically everything will be on a chip, and all the laboratories that you need to make a diagnosis, to see the effect of a drug, will be electronic, and the data will be there. Now, we are also moving fast in gene therapy. Greece is already participating in some trials in gene therapy, but it's very limited. It's not happening yet at a wider scale, and part of that is the technology that it is our aspiration that we will get into. Clearly, it's not something we will have ready in 2023, but it's something we want to get into. Gene therapy, the reason that it is slow to catch on in countries like Greece is because it's expensive. And in the United States, the reason that it's working faster is because, as you can see here, there are specific companies, startups that do it, and you can see their stocks, people invest in them and they have high hopes. That ecosystem is still not completely functional in Greece, but we hope that we will be part of that change. It's happening. And in terms of Alzheimer's disease, there's so many now smaller companies that are engaged in therapies. And we certainly hope that some of these compounds can be used, not necessarily, of course, gene therapy, but smaller compounds, small molecules can be tried in Greece. And again, we hope that we bring this system to Greece. I do want to say one or two words. I said it at the beginning, and I really, truly think it's important to always remind us that this technology is amazing. The tools we have are amazing, but we have to be ethical. And you all know what happened with CRISPR, this technology that changes the genome, of course, was easy, and maybe we didn't think about the consequences when we were able to produce goats and other animals by CRISPR, clone animals. That's okay, I guess. For some people, it's not okay. But then, of course, what others thought was impossible happened because quickly human babies were made using CRISPR technology, and you remember these covers. And of course, the guy who did it, Dr. Lee, paid the consequences. But the technology is dangerous, the point is. And it is very important, especially for a chronic disease like Alzheimer's, to start thinking about the ethical principles that will be used for any type of research in these patients, many of whom, and I'm saying this as a clinician who took care of many patients with developmental disorders. So many of our patients with Alzheimer's are compromised. And so the ethics of whatever we do is extraordinarily important to think early on and put the necessary safeguards. So whatever we do using this beautiful technology remains ethical. Going forward, the paradigm of work is based on collaboration, creativity, communication, and critical thinking. The old style of having a famous investigator, Stratakis comes to Greece, does this, doesn't work. It's a team. It is Constantine with Kyriaki here trying to build a new center. We're surrounded by wonderful people in our center. Kyriaki will tell you more about it. Nobody is able to do everything by themselves. And that teamwork approach didn't exist in the past. We were all dependent on the famous investigator, the famous director, the big guy. It's not like that. It is all about collaboration, creativity, communication, and of course, critical thinking in the sense that you can't learn something and apply it. You really have to try it, learn from your mistakes, and proceed. But at the same time, we're dealing with employees around us that are not necessarily part, as I said at the beginning about the clinicians, are not part of these rapid change. And so it is a problem that I actually don't have big solutions. But I think part of what we do here today, for example, webinars, YouTube, movies, people that can listen to others and see all this excitement and maybe be enticed to participate. But we definitely have to do a better job in engaging the biomedical workforce that gradually seems to stay out of whatever is happening. And we can't afford that. We really have to engage them. Now, and I'll stop here my part to allow for Kyriaki to present, but one other thing I wanted to say is that, and that's from a paper that was published in 2019 in Science, very clear, as the public money drains, the importance of the private sector. We're still talking about private-public partnerships. There's no way you can do that, either public alone or private alone. There's no way about it. However, what we do see is that there is a gradual move of the importance of the public sector to the private sector. In other words, the private sector is now becoming a bit more important with the years in terms of investment in the new technologies, in terms of the importance for changing the healthcare systems. The states, United States, other states, the Greek state, European Union, the European countries, they all realize that the states alone cannot bring high tech to the healthcare. And that's very true, of course, for chronic diseases like Alzheimer's. The private sector has a tremendous role to play. And what you see here is that accordingly, corresponding to what I just said, you see the new PhDs, the new graduates of graduate schools, they don't go to work for the public sector anymore. They increasingly go to work to the private sector. And yeah, it's clearly true for Kyriaki. You're all very lucky to have her. And let me switch to a recent PhD who decides to work in the private sector. So Kyriaki, why don't you present what you're doing?
So, hi on my behalf as well. I'm very happy to speak with you today. I'm not going to take too long of your time because we're actually pretty late, but I'm going to do my best and present the why LPEN was the best bet, and it was the natural evolution for LPEN to have this new institution. This has to do with the history of LPEN and what they have done as the single company in Greece to go that way. So 25 years ago, LPEN has introduced a new thing for Greece, the Experimental Research and Training Center. This center is there as the biggest privately owned experimental and applied biomedical research laboratory in the country, but it also is one of the most prominent in Europe. And this is true in many, many ways. This was the realization of a vision of the founder of LPEN, Mr. Dimitrios Katapragas, who I haven't had the honor to meet yet, but I've been told many, many times that his motto is caring for people. And he says this every year in every celebration of the company. He's driven by that, and he's persistently seeks to do it. So he invested a lot of his time and a lot of his money to create a research and education center in LPEN in 1996. This center became a hub for what Mr. Stratakis was, Dr. Stratakis was, talking about all this time in the previous slides, bringing together the private sector with academia, making it a hub for healthcare professionals to work scientifically and use the funds from a private company, because funds are scarce, as you all know, and in Greece, this is even more so true. So The pillars of the existing center are twofold. First, we have research, and then we have education. As far as research is concerned, the center is partnering with medical and scientific societies, universities, and hospital clinics to perform research on innovative ideas, on PhD projects, on ideas from somebody who has a new compound for a drug, and so on and so forth. As far as education is concerned, the center is both developing and offering a series of accredited educational programs for both Greek and international specialists, young doctors, and other scientists that work in the health care business. So the R&D that's created by the Alpen Center is these 5 different categories, as we see here. We have scientific partnerships, we have international research collaborations, we have experimental projects that have to do with many fields, and then we have preclinical experimental research and medical trainings. So we cover a vast range of research as well as education, as you'll see in my next slide. So the research in figures goes as follows. The center has produced so far, and these are figures up until 2019, because the past year, as you all know, was a bit slow, so we didn't make statistics for that. So the center up until 2019 had produced over 350 research protocols in over 20 areas of research. And in those protocols, we had medical specialists from over 30 categories. Specializations, I mean. So about 12,000 researchers have visited the premises, and they have been trained over there. We have the presence of the center in international congresses with over 750 presentations. There are 300 publications in peer-reviewed journals, international ones, and 80 national ones. 80 chapters in scientific books, and over 2,000 citations. Now, this might not look too impressive for somebody in the United States, but for a privately owned research institute in Greece, which is the only one actually, we're pretty proud about it, given the obstacles. Now, as far as education is concerned, it doesn't make too much sense now because we lack time to see all the areas that we cover education-wise. However, we have to mention that our center is the only one that has been accredited by the UAMS and the NASCE. There are over 25,000 participants in our program so far. You're going to have this presentation so you can see all of the fields that we cover, but it's almost the entire specializations of the medical field and some of the biomedical and genetics fields. An indication of the collaborations of the center so far are institutes, foundations, and universities that are around the world. They're not only in Greece, they're European and United States as well. And I'm going to end with a slide that shows that this endeavor by Mr. Dimitrios Petafragas has given over 20 million euros so far for research and education in this center, because as you can understand, everything so far has been done for free in our center. It was a donation, if you like, something like a giveaway, a gift for the country. But now we are investing in the future, and this is the natural evolution, as we said before, about what Alpen is going to do with the new center, the new institute, which Mr. Stratakis is going to be leading.
So thank you, Kyriaki, and we'll present to you the new institute. So this is a building that's actually going up. So you can see here where we are. This is our current site. Here's where the new research is. So here's where the airport of Athens is. So the new institute is about 9 kilometers from the airport. It's a beautiful new design by one of the best architectural design firms in Greece. We already have, as I said before, an affiliation with ITE, the Foundation for Research and Technology, alas, in Heraklion, Crete, but we also have academic affiliations with the European University of Cyprus, with the Aristotelian University of Thessaloniki, with also other smaller places, academic places and clinics. The building, well, guess what? It has the shape of an X chromosome. It's both to honor women. The name of the company is actually after the wife of the founder, so Eleni Petafraga Alpen. So here's her X chromosome. So the X chromosome is the shape of the lab. We're dedicated to what gave birth to humanity, right? And as a pediatrician, I couldn't be more proud for that. It has three components. It has a research center. It has a conference center that will serve the education activities. And it also has a sports center, which we actually hope that it will be engaged in sports medicine research. The inside will be just like any other lab. You are at Hopkins and other labs, you know how labs look like. Although we're trying to make it quite modern, and it will be a beautiful design inside. I told you already, the focus will be personalized medicine, bioinformatics, and pharmacogenomics. We have a structure that we are now finalizing. It will have its own board of directors and a scientific council. The director of the institute, in this case, I will be the founding director, and I will serve a term. There will be a director selected every so many years. I don't know exactly what the term will be. And the investigators will be selected from all over the world. There's absolutely no reason in a private research institute, if you are at Hopkins and you want to spend 3 months, but you will come here with 1/3 of your grant or 1/4 of your grant, right? So that's 3 months. Bring us the money, you come here, you spend 3 months. I don't really care whether you live in the States or you live like, who cares? We are on a flat world. That's the concept. You can be in Singapore and do your research in Athens. You can fly to Tokyo and do your research in Athens. Who cares? The concept is here, we do high-tech research. It is research that can't be done in Greece, and it has no holdups, basically, right? So we are modern in that sense, as I told you before. The funding streams, the way we see it, will be contracts, grants, of course. Seminars, workshops, and training will offer 1/3 of our operation will be training. And we definitely are looking for donors and investors. And of course, we want to be engaged in clinical assays, bioassay development, so that may give us some clinical income. Now, allow me the last couple of slides. I know I have a few more minutes. Is that okay? Yeah, all right, go ahead. All right. So I'll just show you an example, you know, of my own research. As I'm not an Alzheimer's investigator. I worked for many years on solid tumor genetics. I identified many genes. Here's one study on Alzheimer's, one of the most seminal studies on genome-wide searches for Alzheimer's. I hope you are all Alzheimer's researchers, and I hope you agree that this Nature Genetics paper back in 2019 was a really good one. And so I looked carefully at the raw data of that paper in anticipation of my talk. And then just last week, I realized that there is a hit here, which was not discussed in the paper, on chromosome 2. So in red is what was discussed in this paper. There's many, many, many papers that cite this Nature Genetics paper in Alzheimer's disease research. But there was not a lot of genes that were discussed in that paper on chromosome 2. And yet, if you can see here, very clearly, chromosome 2 is the second strongest statistically hit after the ApoE allele, right, on chromosome 19. All right, so chromosome 2 contains a gene that I identified in 2006. So I saw this paper just last week in Human Molecular Genetics identifying PD11A. This is a phosphodiesterase breaking down cyclic AMP and cyclic GMP, but I don't know if it is the cyclic AMP function or the cyclic GMP function that is relevant here. But in any case, this PD11 gene was found mutated in a large study from China in patients with Alzheimer's disease, and you can see the gene was inactivated in Alzheimer's disease versus controls. The variants were some of the variants that I had already identified, and you can see they did the sequencing. I told you before, it's very easy today. They do the sequencing and they can do the structural biology. Very clearly, these missing substitutions affect the function of this enzyme. Well, here's my paper. It was also published in Nature Genetics, but it was published in 2006. So that's 13 years before the Nature Genetics genome widescreen on Alzheimer's, which did not talk about PD11A, but the Chinese unearthed the data, and it seems to be PD11A that gives a strong signal on chromosome 2, or at least one of the strong signals. Very clearly, I also identified inactivating variants. And you can see that just like the Chinese did, I had described decreased activity of the enzyme in these patients that have adrenal tumors. And I then went on, and over the years, I just published the mouse for PD11A from my lab in the United States. And very clearly, you can see I discovered PD11A variants predisposing to prostate cancer, testicular cancer, and other types of endocrine tumors. Now, what I'm trying to say, you may know there's a lot of literature linking Alzheimer's disease to prostate disease and so forth. And so now we have an avenue here that we can investigate. All of this research is possible in Greece. There's plenty of samples of patients with prostate disease that may or may not have Alzheimer's, so you can investigate PD11A and see if that's true. And my lab will be up and running very soon. I will put a grant on that and maybe you can fund me. And I will let you know whether PD11A variants in Greece predispose or not to Alzheimer's disease. So here's an example of what can be done, if you know what you're doing, and because things are so interconnected. Also, I read this paper recently in preparation for this talk, of course, because as I said, I'm not an Alzheimer's disease researcher in brain, and I found it amazing because it talked about something that I always talk about disease. An Alzheimer's disease is like any other disease. A doctor has to think of two things when you see a disease. Not only what causes the disease, but what also protects you from the disease. Because obviously, if there are 1,000 people that get Alzheimer's, there's millions of people that don't get Alzheimer's. And so the question is, if those that have Alzheimer's and those that don't have Alzheimer's have the same genes, what is it that protects the millions not to get Alzheimer's? So resilience to disease, genetically and otherwise, is extraordinarily important. And for the diseases I study cancer, and I study obesity. And I've always been saying, with everything we eat, why aren't we all obese? I mean, there's clearly some people that eat and don't get fat. And so what is it that protects them? And so the same thing for any disease, the same thing for anything we do in medicine, we have to think of resilience. And in terms of protection from Alzheimer's disease, a chronic disorder that debilitates the brain, resilience factors are extraordinarily important. And as you know, if one has to do this research, one has to look at what's known. I have here some of the beautiful review paper from Cell. I think it's the best recent review on Alzheimer's I read in Cell in 2019, and it shows all the pathways from tau to the immune system to inflammation of the brain and so on. And what's important in that review is this graph, which I'm sure you've seen, because again, I'm excited because I'm not an Alzheimer's disease expert, but it's similar to graphs that I prepare for my talks when I talk about cancer or when I talk about obesity. What you see here is that Alzheimer's starts 20 years before the symptoms start. And what you see is that by the time that you start losing neurons, you already have the peak of the deposition of the amyloid, the microglia and astrocyte activation, and the tau pathology, which seems to be very much closer to the start of the disease. So in our new institute, if we were to be funded to work on Alzheimer's, which I would be very excited about, I would definitely like to look at the genetic factors that affect these three curves. I would actually love to start with tau pathology, which links a little bit to the cyclic AMP signaling and GMP signaling that PD11A does. We could also work on the therapeutic targets that that, as you know, many people are working on now on Alzheimer's. And again, this is research that's totally possible with the skills that we have in Greece and the infrastructure that exists, but of course the infrastructure that will also build. So here is a summary of what our new center can do if you fund us. That's important. Money is always important. Identify new genetic predisposition markers, especially in the Greek population. You know, what is it in the Greek diet, the sleep, environmental factors that may protect or enrich patients. Develop new diagnostic assays, cellular and non-animal models. I didn't say it, but our new center will have a huge vivarium, much bigger than its size in terms of the number of investigators. The goal is to be a lab for hire. Again, if you are in the States and you want to do an experiment here in Greece without being here, you can hire our animals and you can do the experiments here much cheaper than the United States. Assist in the development of new therapies from molecular design to drug studies, support startup companies and new technologies. We will be a host for startup companies in the life sciences, a select number of startup companies. And of course, we are eager to coordinate clinical trials with Greek and international pharmaceutical companies and research centers. So when you grow old and don't understand technology, you do not have Alzheimer's. It's just simply because the future is now. And in order to live with the future, remember what Darwin said. It's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent, but the one most responsive to change, because ta panda ri, everything flows, and we have to go with the flow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, both of you, for this really amazing presentation. And I have to say, I'm very impressed for the new center and very glad that something like this is going to be opening soon in Greece. And I'm glad also for the Alzheimer's, of course, field that it will have great potential for research and promote research in Alzheimer's in Greece. So I would like to, since we don't have a lot of time left, I would like to give the opportunity to the attendees for some questions. Is there any question that you would like to have, any discussion, any comment from the people attending? I cannot see any question in the chat. So I just have like of course, technical question about definitely we'll talk more about the center and have more information. So I'm wondering, of course, it's not only, I guess, Alzheimer's disease will be one of the diseases that you are going to focus as research. What are the other diseases that you are planning to work on?
So we, LPEN business is really 75% cardiometabolic. And so and it's also my field, metabolism. So we plan to study precision medicine genetics in cardiometabolic syndrome. So we will look for grants that have to do with cardiometabolic diseases, predisposition to metabolic syndrome, and so forth. Also, predisposition to cancer, not necessarily oncotherapeutics, at least not at the beginning, because again, we want to hit the ground, start going, moving, without building a huge infrastructure that we don't know whether we're going to be able to support in the future. So we're going to start with simple things, the ones I just told you, and hopefully slowly build up to like oncotherapeutics or cell-based therapies, which is for me a second level, since we're building something from the ground up.
That's very, very interesting. So another question that I have, what about so you're planning actually to write grants for funding for different, scientific fields? It's going to be Greek from the Greek government, European, United States. And I guess it would be great if you can partner with Greek researchers in Greece working on different fields, because actually one of the let's say comments or complaints of the Greek researchers that I usually hear is that we don't know what's going on in the pharmaceutical, in the pharma area, and we would like to know more, and we would like to partner with them so that we'll have more opportunities to work together.
Right. So so it's not, maybe there's no communication about what's happening in pharma in Greece, but you have to realize traditionally pharma in Greece is a big sector. It's one of the biggest sectors of income for the country. If you look at what Greece exports, it's refined oil, right? Refined oil products, and then second is chemicals and pharmaceuticals. Greece doesn't export much machinery, but it exports chemicals and pharmaceuticals. So there is actually a tradition of pharmaceuticals in Greece. And there has been, therefore, quite a bit of R&D. What is true is that this R&D hasn't found its way to connect to academics, not yet. And second, it was more towards commercialization, making profit to sustain the business, which is reasonable, right? And so it didn't develop the number of patents, the intellectual property that it needed to get to the next level. And I think what's happening right now is, one, we connect to the academia. So there's more of that connection, or opening up to academia, or opening up to the world. And second, the realization comes that now that Greece, has enough capacity to make money out of generics, maybe this is the time to start thinking about the future, because you can't sustain yourself with making generics. Generics will forever be cheap. And so the profit margin will be low. And so you have to start building your own IP, intellectual property, to develop new compounds or new uses of existing compounds so that you can get on to the next level. And we certainly hope that Greece is there now. I mean, there's no other way. It can't sustain because of what I said. Generics, the time of generics making money is probably close to be over.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, Vasiliki.
Yes. Hi, Nico.
Hi. Very briefly, Dr. Stratakis, really thank you. I have to apologize because I couldn't follow it all. I'm on call actually here, so I was in and out. So I just want to ask you about, I'm a neurologist, so I see patients. So I saw in your slides you had some aspect of clinical research. You included clinical trials in the center. I understand, given your background, your presentation, and that the sense of, the mission of this research center would be mostly in relation to, basic science. But can you tell us a little bit more? How do you see involvement or connections with clinical research?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. At this point, the building is not licensed to bring in patients. And therefore, we have to stop at preclinical, everything preclinical. However, we will have 3 branches. And the third branch is responsible for clinical assays and overseeing clinical trials with the hope that one day it will transition to being a real functional CRO or a CRO-like and coordinate clinical trials with hospitals in the area. So, I'm sort of a clinical researcher who has done basic science, and I still run clinical trials at the NIH, of course. So I can't see how going forward in the future we won't be involved in clinical trials. But as I said, right now the building is not designed, it's not licensed to bring in patients. So we will have to rely on partnerships with either public hospitals or private hospitals to run the trials there. Does that answer your...
Oh, I just want to add in this to Nico's comment, but at some point you will definitely need to do all the analysis or the human or the genome sequencing to, you need to have some, the biofluids. You need to have plasma or blood, DNA for all of this stuff, biomarker analysis. So it's not only for clinical trials. So I think it has to be, very close partnership with the doctors, because I understand, yes, you cannot have patients in the center, but definitely you will have to collect all the resources. Sorry, Nico, I interrupted you.
No, this is a great comment. And again, thank you for this comment, because the other thing I didn't say, I couldn't present to you everything we're doing, but we have a huge biobank. And Dr. Bakirtzi knows our struggle to acquire as much space as we can in this building to have a biobank, because as you just said, that we can do. In fact, we want to do that. And so we will have, again, just like I said about the vivarium, we will have a disproportionately large biobank space compared to the space that is dedicated to the research, to the wet lab. The idea being, again, that you can do the research somewhere else if it's clinical, because it won't be done on site. But the samples and the analysis of the samples will be done on site.
Okay. Thank you. Nico?
No, I thank you.
Nico, I think I interrupted you before.
Yeah, it's fine. I don't want to take time from other people. So I thank Dr. Stratakis for the answer. So I think it would be great if we have some translational character in this. Great.
Any other questions? I think, and we have been over the time for about 15 minutes. And since I cannot see any more questions, or if you have, you can also contact Dr. Stratakis and Dr. Bakirtzi. I would like to close this seminar. And I want to thank again Dr. Stratakis and Dr. Bakirtzi for this great presentation. And we are looking forward to work more together on this, especially on the Alzheimer's field, that you very nicely presented how we can combine our forces together.
So we both want to thank you. Of course, I have my emails here on this slide, so if people want to ask me questions, we're open, and we are looking forward to hosting all of you, hopefully no pandemic or whatever, in 2022 at the opening of the new center.
We are looking forward.
Okay. All right.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Thank you.